How's it going, everyone? I'm Vigilance, here with another video for you guys. Before we jump into things though, a reminder to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and be sure to subscribe if you also enjoy my content. Both help me grow my channel, and more importantly, reach out to a greater amount of the community. With all that said, let's get straight into things. So the topic of the day is Neverwinter worth trying or returning to? I'm going to go over quite a few things for this. Strengths, I'm going to go over some weaknesses, some things that kind of play into both categories, what works, what doesn't work, things that could just benefit you in general for why you should try this game out, and if you're on the fence about whether you should even come back to it after taking a bit of some time away from the game. So let's start with some strengths. First off, this is a free-to-play game, and it's free to play to an extent. There can be a bit of pay to progress in this game. And I don't say pay to win because, well, ultimately there is no true winning the game. You could get to late game content, sure, and you can start playing the game and you can take forever to get there by just playing the game itself and not putting money into it. But there is an aspect of pay to win in a sense where I call it pay to progress. So is it free to play? Sure. But just to an extent, keep that in mind. I consider that a strength though, because this game, while it's free, there's plenty of content for you to do and to enjoy, and to just kind of immerse yourself in the lore and the story, and just getting your character set up for running some of the late game stuff like queues, dungeons. It's full of so many things to do as a free to play game. It looks and feels good. Combat is smooth. When you strike an enemy, you're actually striking them there on the spot. When you're blocking or rolling out of an attack, it happens immediately. I'm going to name one other game that I know for certain that this is not as smooth as it could be, Elder Scrolls Online. I tried it out, and the boss could go to make an attack animation. You could back away from him, and you're still going to end up getting hit with it. I mean, sure, you could block, but the fact is like, you're away from that guy, the attack shouldn't even make contact at all, is what I'm getting at. And with this game, if you back away from the enemy, he's not going to hit you. Now, there are ranged attacks and stuff, yes, but when we're looking at it from a perspective of like delayed attacks and things like that, combat is very smooth in this game. There is a lot of variation to the classes and the races in this game. So when you click on and create a new character here, let's just take a look at some of this, right? So you got Dragonborn. Now, this is a premium race that is unlocked through Zen purchase. You can also get lucky and get the Metallic Ancestry Dragonborn. So when it has a locked symbol next to it, usually it's some sort of a premium race. But you also start off play with Human. You get Half-Orc. You have Aasimar, which is another premium race. Gith, also a premium race. You have Wood Elf, Sun Elf, Dwarf, Halfling, Half Elf, Tiefling, Drow, and Menzoberranzan and Drow. There is also the Moon Elf as well. So I typically run with the Aasimar. I just like my character to look a little bit more human. Now granted, this one's got blue skin, but that's a part of what I'm talking about. The variation in this game is just vast. You can do so much with your characters. Now if we were to continue, you got several classes to the game as well. You have Wizard, Ranger, Paladin, Bard, Fighter, Rogue, Warlock, Barbarian, and Cleric. And the one thing all of these classes have in common is the fact that they're all different in their own ways. For instance, the Fighter, he's a sword and board character. He's going to be melee combat specifically, but he has a couple ranged attacks. Whereas other classes do damage over time or other aspects, he is mainly meant for putting out damage in big chunks. When you go to something like the Paladin, for instance, they don't have a DPS spec. They can still do damage, don't get me wrong, but they don't specialize in it like some of the other classes. He's more of a healer or a tank. Go to your Wizard. This is another chunk damage class. You can put out a lot of damage very quickly. But let's look at it also as the fact that it has control aspects to his powers. He can freeze things, he can slow them, stun them. So each class has its own unique variables, and this just goes to support why they have so many different options for your classes to try, and so many different races to just add abilities. One thing I didn't mention about the race is that each one has its own abilities. For instance, the Celestial Superiority here, I'm gaining power, outgoing healing, incoming healing, defense, and max hit points for just being an ASMR. I also share with nearby party members 2% max hit points, and this is an ability that as long as you got one person in the party that's an ASMR, you're giving everybody that buff. These are the kinds of things you want to look at when you're choosing your race. So customization. This game is just loaded with customization. Take a look at my character, for instance. He's half decent looking. You know, he's got some cool looking armor. He's got a golden halo effect around him. There's an appearance library that you can assign things to in this game, and you can choose from anything that you found or earned in the game to be able to make your character look like. You know, I could give my guy the glowing blue eyes if I wanted to, or put on a cool helmet that's got dragon horns on it. I could find a chest piece that just, you know, looks more medieval, like this one. Or I can find something that's totally out of whack and, you know, it's got crystals on it. All of these have different options. And you can have almost like up to 100 in each one of these appearance items. So on the right side of the screen there, you can see it's got 100 out of 100. Obviously, it means I'm going to have to destroy something and get rid of it in order to add something new, but that's just the name of the game at the moment. Hopefully the devs add some more slots down the road. Some of us like to call fashion the true end game in this game because it's what you end up grinding for is more appearance items. But ultimately, the customization is limitless. You can add different armor effects to your character, different weapon effects. The amount of customization that they have in this game is vast, and you can kind of have an endless amount of being able to find something that you like to put on your character. You can also customize the gear that you wear. You know, right now I'm set up for tank, but if I wanted to, I could switch my loadout and instantly switch over to a DPS spec, and now I'm putting out more damage and I'm not as tanky. Another thing, there's plenty to do in this game. There's lots of heroic events, there's campaigns, dungeon queues, crafting, seasonal events, battle passes. I mean, just the campaign alone, when you go to look at different campaign sections to go and complete, they tell you the respective item levels so that you're not, you know, going into a super difficult level area that you're not ready for. You know, these are the leveling adventures here that I was talking about. You go through these zones and you're going to gain a level, you know, and then maybe going to Velosk, you'll gain another level. Up and down, it's the same thing. And each one of these at the bottom right has rewards that you can earn and progress your character. Once you get through to level 20, you can start going through some of these other campaign zones. The adventures tend to be more of, they're going to give you rewards, and they're going to be more geared towards the level of your character getting through and going up to 20. Once you get past some of those, you can try to progress and go into some of the more difficult campaigns, which are called legacy campaigns, and complete some of these. You can see their associated item levels again on the right side. The heroic events you'll find in some of these zones. The campaigns will lead you to those zones, and then you have your dungeon queues. This is the meat and potatoes of Neverwinter right here. This is where everybody likes to go and try to run content. So a lot of people are going to run their random queues. You're going to get your rewards of the daily bonuses listed below. And this is how you get majority of your Astral Diamonds, which is basically like your secondary currency. The main currency is actually Zen, because it's a premium currency. But if we go a step below that, the one thing everybody's trying to earn is Astral Diamonds. So the queues system is how you do that. Does it take a little while for it to pop? If I were a DPS, I could be sitting in this queue from anywhere to 15 to 30 minutes. It could be even longer. It just depends. The game is kind of sorely lacking healers and tanks, and that's why the queues take forever. It's nothing to do with the developers, at least to my knowledge. But if you go through and queue up for one of these things as a tank or a healer, you're going to get in a lot quicker. Just keep in mind you're going to be, filling a specific role, and it could be a little bit more difficult because of that. Typically, your dungeons will have a tank, a healer, and 3 DPS. And you got skirmishes, could pretty much have anything of any kind of class. And then your dungeons will be also matching. It'll have a tank, a healer, and 3 classes as well, DPS classes as well. You could go queuing in for a standard dungeon of a specific choice. If and you got that itch to go and run Fanebreaker Island, you can do that. You could run specific advanced dungeons to get rewards out of those specific dungeons if you wanted to as well. Go into specific skirmishes, trials. These are 10-man content. This is what a lot of people like to strive for. The master ones are obviously a lot harder and require higher item level, which keep in mind they're designed to be very hard. So everybody's experience is going to be totally different. There is a player versus player in this game. but this isn't really one of the strengths of it, and I'll get to that a little bit later. The Reaper Challenge. This is actually something that was designed to kind of go more towards late game players, but also helps out some of the intermediate players as well, people who are starting to kind of come into that late game aspect. And then last but not least, the current content, Dragon Hunts, which are Module 23, just recently added in queues. And you can go in and run some of these, and they give you currency to be able to buy some of the best gear in the game at the moment. So this is a strength also that I will talk about later, where basically they are trying to appease not only the new crowd, but the existing crowd of both moderate to late game players as well. So instances, I could look up in our instance right now, and I could see in the Protector's Enclave, there's just hundreds of people just chilling and posting, and you can see it in the comment section in the bottom left there, looking for content to run, posting for trades. When you look at the population of the game, it's still bouncing. You know, we could go over to another instance. Let's transfer over to Neverdeath Graveyard and see how many people are running Neverdeath Graveyard right now. So the instance here, we're going to pull it up. Right now there's only 35 people here. But this is a very beginning, like first area that you come to in the game, and it still has a decent amount of players. You know, you'll run through here and you'll actually encounter other players doing their quests. There's a couple there grabbing a quest. We could probably come back and run into some people back here slaying some zombies and some skeletons. Just gonna run back here real quick. There you go. This guy's running from a bunch of zombies, you know. So we were going to talk about dev support next. Listening to the community is a very strong point that they've had recently. Now, I'm not going to say that they answer all the questions that we pose to them, but I mean, they've been doing some things like hosting streams and trying to answer questions for people, giving out some tidbits of information about upcoming content or things they might be working on, just providing a source of interaction with the player base. Not all MMOs do that. The fact that Neverwinter does, I think, kind of separates it from some of the others. And the fact that they're listening to the community, again, not on every single thing we talk to them about and ask them in chats, but the fact that they're actually addressing certain concerns that we all have and putting the attention on some of the major areas that need focusing on, that I think is a very large strength for this game. As I mentioned before, there's a good mix of hard, moderate, and easy content across all levels. Again, if you ever want to just kind of go through and see, you know, what queues are difficult, you could just pop it up and see, okay, Cloak Tower is required 25 item level to go through just as a regular dungeon. Bump it down a little bit here, you got 25 across the board from pretty much all of these. Want to go into some harder content, advanced dungeons, 35 to 45 for these dungeons to run. Skirmishes, these are going to be the easier ones, 20k. 30k for things like Crown of Keldagon, Assault on Svarborg, Cradle to Death Guide for any of these trials, and then it gets a little harder towards the end, 50s, 60s, even 70,000s. Reaper queues can kind of go back and forth. I've seen it go as low as 30,000, but I've also seen it as high as 50,000 like it is for today. And these change every single day. It kind of gives you new challenges, like you can see on the bottom down there, challenge conditions. They're trying to make it harder and giving you more rewards for running that kind of content. We need to see more things like that in this game. But the fact that they have it is a strength. Another thing too about Neverwinter is it has a very strong narrative. If you're really big into the lore for Dungeons and Dragons, or you just like a good story, again, as a free-to-play game, there's so many different zones that you can go through, each one having their own story. You start off trying to become this person helping out Neverwinter to redeem it from a fallen state, and you rise to become this hero that pretty much is called upon for every single problem. Not even just with Neverwinter, for other zones, like Sharendar, for instance. It's a whole other plane of existence. It's, you know, revolving around the Feywild, and you get called up because you're this legendary hero of Neverwinter that people have heard about, and so you make this name for yourself as you're going through the campaign, becoming more and more renowned. So if you like a good narrative, it has a strong narrative for this game. You meet other legendary heroes as you go through. Drizzt, Minsk, you could go and meet Regis and Celeste and all these other people. The game has a strong community too. It's strong because I see how much people put out information about this game. You know, as a member myself of the community, I like to kind of create some content on YouTube. There are several content creators out there that put out videos all the time about things in the game, like gear or some of the mounts that are coming out, events, highlighting what's important to do during those said events. There's Twitch streamers and other streaming services that are putting out live videos on how to go through dungeons and just entertainment purposes. You could use those to kind of brush up on tactics or just to kind of see what other people are doing. There's online support for media like Facebook communities that you can join into for, you know, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, Discord servers, Reddit posts. There's all sorts of options that you can go and rely on to be able to help progress your character as you're going through this game. And again, it's free to play. Those information sources are also free unless you choose to do things like premium subscriptions, things like that. And then we get to the weaknesses of the game. There could be challenging instances. So this could be a weakness because you could be a brand new player just hitting level 20, and then you start going into some campaign zones just because you're level 20, and you see, oh, I just hit item level 2100, so you go to Dread Ring. Well, if you go to Dread Ring and you level up a little bit, now you're up into the mid-20s, we'll say. You've done some grinding into the queues and gotten some new gear. Now you're hitting up into the 30s and the mid-20s. You start pushing yourself into the Path of the Fallen, where you're fighting a lot of demons and devils and the harder kinds of enemies in the game. Then now all of a sudden, hey, I've started earning into the 40Ks and 50Ks. Now you start going to these zones. These enemies are going to be hard here too. You're fighting cultists for the Dragonbone Vale. You're fighting different types of monsters from the Feywild and Sharendar. They all have hard-hitting enemies, and these are the more recent content. So you could do that, or you can even go back and run some easier content. My point is that challenging instances do exist, and there is specific content that you're going to have to run in groups. For instance, heroic events. Some of them can be soloed. Others, like the ones in Sharendar, it's good to have a group with you. The weak part of this is that it's challenging in general, and for a lot of people that could be a very difficult thing for the game. Lacking a strong balanced PvP is another problem for this game. It has PvP, so if we go to the queue, you can actually see it. You know, they've got domination, and they've got solo domination. It's kind of like team deathmatch, basically, where you have to go and hold a specific area. You got Gauntlegrim Battlegrounds, which is pretty much literally just going around and killing a bunch of people, and it tells you in the description. Stronghold Siege, you can kind of do like a 20 on 20, and basically one castle versus another, and you have to try to activate catapults and attack somebody else's stronghold. These are things that you can do, but they lack balancing, and that's why they're not very popular at the moment. I could go in there as a heavily geared out PvP player and have a total advantage on everybody else that's just queuing in it to try to get some sort of an advantage, like glory, which is the currency that you can earn for doing PvP. The fact that it's not balanced and there is no scaling of any kind in there is what makes it very difficult for people, and that's why it brings it down to a weakness for the game, because it's just not up to par with some of the other services the game provides. Another thing that really kind of pulls this game down is some of its bugs, and its game support is just a little bit slow. Bugs will arise, and some of them can be real detrimental to your character. I'll give a perfect example. I like to put this one out in every single one of my videos in hopes that a dev sees it down the road. As a fighter, and even as a paladin or a barbarian, any class that can block with its shield right now in the game, if you were to block with just your standard block, which is clicking in your left joystick, and you happen to die while you're blocking, it will put you into what's called a shield glitch. And that shield glitch makes it so that you can't res with a scroll of life, you can't call for assistance, you can't release your character and just die outright and respawn back in, if that's what it allows for in the content that you're running. My point is that it's a glitch in the game. It's not designed to do that. When you go down, you're supposed to have the option of making those choices, and it prevents you from making those choices. And this is a bug that has been around for a long time. I've been in the game for 5 years, and it's still here. It was here when I first started. So bugs can take a while for them to get to, and sometimes they go kind of underneath the radar and devs don't even know about them. So the game support, like I said, it's a little on the slow side. They do address bugs typically within like a weekly fashion. They'll do a weekly update and they'll put patch notes out on like social media platforms like Facebook, for instance, and they'll update the players on what's been fixed, and they'll give a little description. But it's not covering all bugs in the game. It's just, you know, ones that they know about or that they discovered or that they heard about. And so this is hopefully trying to get some of that out to them as well. The end game Astral Diamond to Zen Exchange is a super behind platform for this Xbox. It's also behind on the PlayStation and on the PC. So if we go in and we look at the Astral Diamond Exchange here, this is a way for players to be able to buy or sell Zen, which is the premium currency. Now, if I wanted to buy Zen, right, I would have to type in how much I want. Let's say it's 100. Right now, I would have to say 750, because that's the amount that it's currently going for, which I'll show in a second here. And it tells you that you will be offering Astral Diamonds in exchange for that Zen. Well, the problem with it is right now is I can't buy Zen because it's going to take me a month and a half to 2 months just to be able to get it. And that's on the Xbox. I've heard PlayStation is about the same, but PC is way further behind than that. They're like a couple months, 3 months, if that. And so this isn't even an option for most players right now, which is why this weakens the game. Now, if you wanted to sell Zen, this is where you could do it, no problem, because there's plenty of it requested right now. See, at the bottom there, it says 14,615,779. That's how much is requested right now. People are trying to buy Zen, it's just there's none being sold. So if you did want to sell some though, say you bought some of the premium Zen currency and you wanted to turn it into Astral Diamonds, that's an immediate fix, and you're going to get the 750 for each one of them because of the requested quantity. The other way around buying it is what's preferred though. People want to be able to buy the premium currency so that they can buy things in the Zen market which are specifically premium currency. If I wanted to buy, for instance, a pack of these enchanted keys, and I wanted to just be able to do it with in-game currency I earned by putting time into the game, I can't do that right now. And that's where this weakness is really dragging the game down from this Astral Diamond to Zen Exchange. Now, for this next one, we're going to call this has an established player base running late game content. Because a lot of people who have gotten progressed so far into the game, they tend to look for players of their own caliber to run the content. This is a negative quality about the game, and it drags it down a lot because returning players and newer players, they feel left out and they're wanting to leave the game as a result because they're not being included in things. Let's just take a look here, for instance. This is DPS, and she's looking for content to run the dragon hunts. She has a high item level, she'll probably get picked up. But if you were to find somebody, I don't know, let's just take a look here and see. You got a 40,000 level person. Now, the item level doesn't always reflect exactly what it is when you inspect somebody, unless like you're in the same instance as them. So I say usually it's about 7,000 to 8,000 difference. So this person's actually probably sitting pretty close to like 47 to 46,000 item level right now. But that's a pretty low when you consider the fact that there's people out there in their 70s and 80s. So the problem with the dragon hunts right now is people are wanting to get in, they're wanting to farm really quickly, they're wanting to get their stuff done, get their currency for the week, and then maybe go to an alt character and start farming. So what happens is you get these groups where people want to just go and farm and get it done as quick as possible, and they're going to only invite people around their same level or that are outfitted in the same gear. And that's just going to happen in these kinds of games, and that's what brings it into a negative quality about the game, is that it's excluding some of the other player base, and it's going to turn people away from the game. Somehow there's got to be a way to try to put that into a queue where you can, you know, have there be a higher item level queue and maybe a lower item level queue, and make advantages for doing the lower item level queue as well, just to kind of help the community out a little bit. The game has had a hard time pleasing the late game players as well as some of the mid to beginning level players as well. As a new and returning player base, they're able to get into a lot of content, but when it comes to getting into the late game stuff, they're not going to be able to do that as soon as they want to. It takes time to get there, and that's going to bring us to that pay to progress that I was talking about later, which we'll get to here in a second. Lately, the game has changed ever so slightly, but it's progressed at a very, very slow rate, and At the very least, though, it has done some changing. In the past, the focus seemed to be more set towards the newer and returning player base, giving them more content, things to kind of look forward to, new unlocks for their characters, things like that, with premium rewards coming out in the game, some even free. And so what they've changed today is by adding in these dragon hunts, right? We can find the campaign store, and you have all these different gear pieces. Now, these are just like the basic dragon rewards that you're using here to get these purple and a few of these mythic rings. This is some of the better stuff in the game, but ultimately the highly sought after stuff is this mythic armor on the ancient dragon side here. And this is what they are targeting the late game players for, to go and let them grind out specific pieces that they want. If you're a mid to beginning level player, you can go through and see, okay, I can earn some of this stuff, and this stuff will help me get to the ancient dragons. And that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to give some of those mid-level players a chance to be able to progress. So lately they've been kind of changing the game in a way where they're allowing people to kind of satisfy some of their wants and desires for all levels of play, beginning and late game. Now, earlier I had talked about there is some categories that kind of fall into both negative and positive. So the one where it's kind of both, we talked about pay to progress. Now, you can go into the Zen market, you can spend some money on this game, and you can go into, say, like supplies, for instance. You can buy some mythic insignia packs, try to get lucky, get some mythic insignias, which are going to boost your character's stats, your overall item level, things of that nature. You can buy Prez Wards to upgrade certain things like your artifacts, mount collars to give yourself some benefits from the mounts, and in additional to that, usually some item level. Tokens to upgrade your mounts, your companions. All these things are ways to increase your character. Comotes, which are required in upgrading your artifacts as well. These are all things that will help boost your character. Now, it's a negative because, well, you can just pay your way up and eventually get to a high item level, but then you have no experience with your character. On the positive side, these are here, and they're able to be obtained technically through a free method. If you were to go through and, say, earn enough Astral diamonds, you could turn it into Zen. Again, it would take you on the Xbox about 2 months to get that, but you could essentially get your Zen from a free method and then come in here and buy something that will help your character, which is a positive. They just need to get somehow a plan figured out for the Astral Diamond exchange to Zen, figured out to bring out that balance to where it's not so backlogged. This is just ridiculous. 14 million, and I know PC is even worse, like I said earlier. This needs to be fixed. I don't know how, personally. I'm sure a lot of people have ideas on that, but it needs to be changed. Another thing that is kind of both positive and negative, there's dual-paced combat. It's a little slower in the beginning, building up your character over time, and becoming fast-paced a little bit more towards the late game. But ultimately, it's positive that it could take a little bit of time to kind of learn your character going through the zones. They've actually streamlined it and made it a lot faster. They've cut down a certain amount of quests that you have to do. They've cut down on the amount of zones that you had to do. The old level cap used to be 80 in this game. They've dropped it down to 20 to be more in line with the tabletop Dungeons & Dragons. And it doesn't take you quite as long to have to go through a level 20 character. I think the last time I took a character through, it took me, I don't know, half of a day to get him through. And that was without any special events. They got rid of XP, so now it's literally just completing leveling adventures. Just completing some of those. And once you progress far enough, you get level 20. Then you start getting your gear score higher by earning better, gear score. You can do things to get seals like your queues. You take your seals that you earn in those queues, and you can buy weapons, armor, from different parts. There's different types of seals you can earn from easier or harder content, and these are all things that give you item level and stats. In the very beginning, as you're going through, you're going to earn a lot of seals of the adventure. This is where you come and spend some of that stuff. You can progress your character by just getting some better gear initially, and then upgrading it once you get into some of the moderate content, and then some of the harder content. So there is a way to progress, and I find that that's both a negative and a positive because it takes a little while. That's the negative aspect of it. The positive is that you have a way of doing it. Some topics that I definitely wanted to cover about the game to, remind some returning players or kind of give education to some of the new players coming in. They have made a lot of things account-wide. So when I talk about account-wide, when you get an enchantment up to mythic quality, which is going to take you a little while, this is something that wasn't doable before. They had rank 15 enchantments. It was a legendary enchantment prior to the reworks that they've done recently. And they've made it to where there's basically, there's a green quality, which is common. Then you have blue, which is rare. Then you've got purple, which is epic, legendary orange, and then teal, which is mythic. So 5 different levels of enchantments. Once you get it to max level, you can actually take your enchantment over to this vendor down here, the reward claims agent. And in her inventory, you can take and look at what enchantments you have brought to mythic. You could turn them in for a free version. You could turn in the soul shield, and you can unlock an account-wide version. See how it says account unlocked there? So across all your characters, you're able to claim this enchantment for free. Not actually for free. It took you time to build it up, which had some cost associated. But instead of going on each one of your characters and grinding one of these things up, you can actually have it across all your characters. Same goes for all enchantments in the game at the moment. So that gives people an opportunity to play on their other classes that they didn't have before. When I first started this game, I used to play on like my wizard and try to level him up a little bit, but he was always lacking in the gear, always lacking in the enchantments, the insignias, the mounts, the companions. And so they made some of these options more account-wide. Let's look at another option here. They brought out, during events or during free giveaways and stuff like that, or even like through purchasing lockboxes, the ability to go to your claim valuables tab, and once you've unlocked an account mount, you can scroll down and you can find one, and you can say, I want this on all my characters. So you go to this section on each character you log in on, and you just simply click on it and claim it. You could do that for all your mounts and companions, artifacts that you account-wide unlock from your main character, and you're just able to transfer it all over. You give that character so much more item level, so much more stats, and so that's a topic I wanted to cover because that stuff's become a lot more common now. So if you're coming into the game and you're like, you want to try out a few different classes, well, you can play on one class that you really, really like after a while, and once you start earning things that are account-wide, you can start taking those to your other classes and playing those other classes and getting a whole new experience with the game. Alright, so we were talking earlier about combat. Now, when we go into combat here, we can just simply come in, target an enemy, and attack them all. Let's go into another combat situation here. We're going to start getting hit, right? And then we're going to put up our block. And in anything that hits us, we're going to immediately block. Now, if I get away from these guys, some of them might attack us, and they're going to miss. Like that red line attack there. You have time to get out of those. Now, there's a couple people hitting me with like ranged lightning attacks and stuff like that. But it's not like in Elder Scrolls Online. In Neverwinter, they won't. So the next thing I wanted to bring up was zones. There are so many different zones in this game. So if we summon our travel post here with our VIP, and we look at the list, there are just so many zones across Neverwinter, the game itself. And we can go to some individual zones like Icewind Dale. There's more here. Underdark. There's another one. It's a social space. Chult. You got a couple locations there. And then Undermountain. You got a whole nother slew here. Avernus. Its own locations as well. So there's plenty of zones in this game. I'm going to do a showcase on what the loot boxes look like. You can reroll with reroll tokens that you can get from like VIP, things like that. And show you the different outcomes of it. They've updated the loot system. I've seen somebody get 100,000 refined Astral diamonds in one box. That's huge. That was never like that. I mean, yeah, they had smaller amounts drop, but 100,000, I think that's the most I've ever seen. They've got, orange gems like your brilliant diamonds, your teal diamonds, violet diamonds. You can get all of those as refinement drops from pretty much every roll that you get in a dungeon. Sometimes there'll be an epic quality, but for the most part it's legendary. So they've changed the loot drops around the entire thing. They've included more transmutes, mythic insignias, legendary insignias, greater shards of empowerment, genie's gifts, straight refined astral diamonds. just all sorts of stuff that they've added to the loot tables just from listening to the community. Ultimately, the game's moving in the right direction right now, and we've seen a bump in consideration towards all player levels, new, moderate level, and even end game or late game, as I like to call it, with this last mod especially. A good variety of gear to grind for all levels and all player bases. Battle passes, which I'll touch on in a minute, while lacking slightly, have offered something in most cases to appease all player levels. And rehashing of old trials for the late game players, making them more difficult, more challenging, giving unique rewards in those. This all leads me to say that the game has its good and also its bad points, as I've said before. Is it worth playing still? Yes, absolutely. Ultimately, it's a fun experience playing Neverwinter, especially because it's a free-to-play game, rich with a lot to be done in the game, a lot of content, a lot of lore, a lot of gear, loot, all that kind of stuff. If I had any recommendations for the new and returning players specifically that are watching this video, it would be to brush up on your content. Any of us creators, specifically YouTube, Twitch, any streaming platforms, go through on some of like the Reddit posts, Google questions, and follow some different communities on social media platforms like Facebook or Discord. I'll even include some links in my description at the end. The game is best played with friends also. So hop on, get into an active guild at some point once you've kind of gotten your character to level 20, or even before that. Get into a guild setting, meet people, make some friends, run some content together. Ask your questions to your leaders in those guilds. Get the help that you need, the direction that you need to go and level up your character the correct way and the fastest way possible. It's a lot better than running it solo. It'll help you grow and get you more acclimated to the game. And if I had advice for late game people and gamers, as we like to call them as well, try mixing it up a little bit. Try tuning into some different content that you can actually go and challenge your character, like Crown of Keldagon as an example. Maybe try helping a new player in an experience for his first dungeon that he's done. You'll feel good for helping them. You'll offer them some advice, and it'll pull you away from your everyday grind of things that are just, kind of bogging the game down. It'll give you that ability to make the game feel a little bit more fresh. Or perhaps try something more challenging, like I said, with Crown of Keldagon, go and do something just because it's a harder difficulty. It doesn't have to drop the best gear in the game. It's a new experience and it's a challenge for your character. So go run, the harder dungeons. Perhaps make a new class to experience a different play style. There's so many things that you can do to really spice up your experience as a late game player. The last thing I wanted to touch on is that the game has actually gone forward in another positive direction. By including things like battle passes. This is kind of a mixed topic in the community right now, whether it's good or whether it's bad. So in this battle pass, on the top row is what the regular rewards are. On the bottom row, they would be the premium, and it would have a locked symbol. I've decided to go ahead and get the premium stuff because even though it can't benefit my main character, these are things that I could put on my alt characters to help them out. Things like the Epic Mount Collar Choice Pack here. I could go through with some legendary insignias and include those for my other characters that don't have those insignias. Getting account-wide mounts that I didn't have before, things like that. Now, the plus side with these is they are definitely benefiting the newer and the returning players. People who don't have these collars, people who don't have as many insignias and upgrade tokens that they need to get their characters' mounts and companions leveled up. Characters that need legendary mounts that don't have them yet. These are all kind of designed for mid-level to beginning level characters. That's going to wrap up my video. As I mentioned before, smash that like button if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe to follow me in more future content and videos. And let me know what your thoughts are in the comments section below. I'll see you guys in the next video soon. Have a great day.